When the Gulf War broke out in August 1990, the United States led a coalition of 42 countries against Iraq. However, of the 42 countries, the U.S. Navy played the biggest part thanks to their advanced technology and lethal munitions. Which U.S. Navy ships were deployed, and what roles did they play in the Persian Gulf conflict? Stay with us in this video to find out. By the build-up to the Gulf War in the late 1980s, the U.S. Navy had become one of the most formidable in the world, having a wide range of advanced warships, destroyers, aircraft carriers, and other frigates. Because of these, fleets of different models of watercraft were deployed at different stages of the war. For this video, we'll be looking only at the ships that played major roles in the conflict, starting with the Knox-class frigates. Originally designed as ocean escorts, this class of frigates were the largest, last, and most numerous of the U.S. Navy's second-generation anti-submarine warcraft escorts, with 46 member ships. All of the ships in this class had been constructed in the early 70s, so by the time the Gulf War broke out, they were all in the twilight of their service. However, those deployed to the Persian Gulf were still able to serve in very important capacities despite their age. One of her members, the USS Barbey, for example, was originally sent to the region as part of a peacetime deployment, but her mission was quickly altered when hostiles in Iraq began invading the Emirate of Kuwait. Barbey was employed to enforce the sanctions specified by UN resolutions, and together with her embarked helicopter detachment, HSL-35 Magnus 32, she performed more surface ship interdiction intercepts than any other fleet unit in the AG during the period. She served in interdiction and escort operations for most of the early months of the war, holding the front line until more lethal ships could be sent out. Another Knox-class frigate, USS Vreeland, had participated in the United States invasion of Panama in the events that led to the Gulf War. So when the war did break out, Vreeland was deployed to take part in Operation Desert Storm. Some of her crew members were also assigned to the Multinational Interception Force during this time. What made the Knox-class ships so useful during these early stages of the war was that these ships were originally planned to be an improvement on the gun-armed and missile-equipped that had come before her. After there were changes due to construction issues, the Knox-class ships were designed with two 1,200 psi boilers each, one Westinghouse steam turbine, and a single shaft. By the time of the Gulf War, the ships had been refitted with hurricane bows to prevent deck wetness, and bulwarks and spray strakes were added to prevent burrowing into oncoming seas for forecastle armament protection. Called the AN/SQS-35V, Independent Variable Depth Sonar, an 8-round basic point defense missile system launcher, and a .79-inch Phalanx CIWS aft. For the short-range surface-to-air missile system, most of the Knox had the RIM 7 Sea Sparrow missile, although USS Downes had a NATO Sea Sparrow launcher instead. They also had designs which allowed them to launch Harpoon anti-ship missiles from the ASROC launcher. This carried 2 Harpoons, while the other 2 were in the ship's ASROC magazine. Their original armament also included a 5-inch 54 caliber Mark 42 gun, 1 Mk16 8-cell ASROC launcher, and 2 dual Mark 32 Mark 46 torpedo launchers. We should also mention that although these frigates weren't aircraft carriers, their refitted designs by the Gulf War allowed them to carry 1 SH-2 Sea Spirit helicopter. Moving on, the most widely used destroyers during the Gulf War were the Spruance-class warships. Built to replace the Allen M. Sumner and Gearing-class destroyers, these ships were the primary destroyers of the U.S. Navy during the 1970s and 1980s. They were designed to be much larger than the other destroyers of the era, similar in size to contemporary guided missile cruisers. The size made them not only the first destroyers to have room to accommodate a helicopter flight deck, but also the first to have an enclosed hangar with space for up to 2 medium-lift helicopters. The Spruance-class ships were also the first large U.S. Navy ships to have gas turbine propulsion, as they were designed for the 4 General Electric LM2500 gas turbines that generated up to 80,000 horsepower. Although their original armament of 2 guns and an ASROC and Sea Sparrow missile launcher were considered weak, the entire class later received quadruple Harpoon missile launchers. It's also important to note that every ship in this class could carry Sikorsky SH-60 Seahawk LAMPS 3 helicopters. Some members of the class also had armored box launcher Tomahawk surface-to-surface missiles, while others had a 61-cell Mark 41 vertical launch missile system for the Tomahawk. Others had 2 quadruple Harpoon missile canisters, 2 20mm Phalanx CIWS Mark 15 gun, 2 quadruple ABL Mark 143 Tomahawk missile launchers, and a few had one 21-cell rolling airframe missile launcher each. By the time of the Persian Gulf War, some Spruance-class warships received upgrades, like the test installation of AN/SPQ-9B anti-ship missile defense fire control radar, and the mounting of one 21-cell Mark 49 Rim 116 rolling airframe missile launcher in the starboard fantail of some memberships. One of the members of this class, USS Paul F. Foster, was the first ship to fire Tomahawk missiles against Iraqi targets from the Persian Gulf, and she was also very useful in the liberation of Kuwait. Another Spruance-class destroyer, USS Harry W. Hill, served in both Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm, until her unfortunate collision with the Wichita-class replenishment oiler USS Kansas City. The most successful ship in this class during the Gulf War was the USS Moosbrugger, which was part of the first United States response to Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait. Moosbrugger performed a ton of important duties during the war, from delaying her Suez transit by several weeks, to taking a station in the North Red Sea entrance to the Gulf of Aqaba to support enforcement of UN Iraq sanctions. She also conducted many search and seizure operations in 1990, before getting assigned Maritime Interdiction Patrol in early 1991. Moosbrugger remained at the Gulf of Aqaba, stopping, boarding, and searching merchant vessels flagged by nations sympathetic to Iraq to prevent the supply of war materials. This ship being awarded the Navy Unit Commendation for service during the Persian Gulf War sums up just how effective she and other members of her class were. Another important class of ships in the U.S. Navy's service during the Gulf War were the Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruisers. Unlikely as it may seem, these class of ships were designed based on that of the Spruance-class destroyer, but after many modifications, they proved to be way more lethal. Introducing a new generation of guided missile warships, the Ticonderoga class had the Aegis Phased Array Radar, making them capable of simultaneously scanning for threats, tracking targets, and guiding missiles to interception. By the time of their design, these ships had the most powerful electronic warfare equipment and the most advanced underwater surveillance system in the entire US Navy. They were designed with superstructures that could support 2 deck houses, and had an aft deck house that contained both the aft and port antenna arrays. Being multi-role warships, the Ticonderoga-class ships had Mark 41 VLS that fired Tomahawk cruise missiles. These missiles could strike both land targets and anti-aircraft, SM-2MR-ERs for defense. The Ticonderoga also had LAMPS 3 helicopters, RUM-139 ASROCs, and sonar systems, which made them effective for anti-submarine warfare missions. And that's not all. Initially, the main armament of these ships were Mark 26 guided missile systems, but when they proved too manpower intensive, they were replaced with far more capable and versatile Mk-41 vertical launching system and Mark 45 127mm gun systems. A considerable number of Ticonderoga-class ships also had 2 Mark 41 vertical launching systems, which allowed the ships to have 122 missile storage and launching tubes that could carry many different missiles. Comprehensively, the main armament of this class of ships includes 2 Mark 26 missile launchers, 68 RIM 66 SM-2, 20 RUR-5 ASROCs, 8 RGM-84 Harpoon missiles, 2 5-inch 54 caliber Mark 45 lightweight guns, 4 dual 50-inch caliber machine guns, 2 Phalanx CIWS, 2 Mk-32 12.75-inch triple torpedo tubes, 2 61-cell Mk-41 vertical launch systems, and 8 RGM-84 Harpoon missiles. Add the limited Kevlar splinter armor protection in critical areas, and the 2 MH-60R Seahawk LAMPS Mk-3 helicopters these ships carried, and it's no wonder the Ticonderoga-class vessels were so successful in the Persian Gulf War. A member of the class USS Mobile Bay became the first Aegis cruiser to circumnavigate the globe when deployed to support Operation Desert Shield and Operation Desert Storm. She offered very stellar service all through the conflict, becoming the first Battle Force anti-air warfare commander to control a 4-carrier task force and launching 22 Tomahawk land attack cruise missile strikes. This ship also directed carrier-launched attack aircraft to destroy 38 Iraqi naval vessels, resulting in the complete neutralization of the Iraqi Navy, and was useful in the evacuation of thousands of people displaced by the volcanic eruption of Mount Pinatubo during the war. Pretty impressive stuff, right? And she's not the only Ticonderoga that was of great service to the US Navy in the Gulf War. Her sister ship, USS Antietam, was one of the first vessels to take part in Operation Desert Shield and was involved in a helicopter rescue of 2 British SAS troops. Another member of this class, USS Princeton, and her crew were awarded the Combat Action Ribbon after getting attacked during Operation Desert Storm. This video will not be complete, however, without the inclusion of the Charles F. Adams class ships. A class of 29 guided missile destroyers was built between 1958 and 1967. These ships were the first class designed to serve as guided missile destroyers. They were also the last steam turbine-powered destroyers built for the U.S. Navy, but despite their outdated technology, these class of ships played vital roles in the U.S. Navy neutralizing the Iraqi Navy in the Gulf War. Take USS Sampson, for example. This ship was with the USS Saratoga battle group in support of Desert Shield and Storm. On the battlefield, she conducted the first boarding and search of a merchant during the operation and the first diversion of a ship with prohibited cargo. She then proceeded to operate with the ships of various NATO navies, bolstering surveillance operations and protecting shipping in the approaches to the Suez Canal. Another Charles F. Adams ship, the USS Goldsboro, was one of those deployed with a battle group centered around the aircraft carrier CVN-70 before the war even started. As part of that group, Goldsboro conducted missions in and around the Straits of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf, having received the advanced sensor and communications upgrade. This upgrade enabled her to monitor air activity inside Iranian borders and contribute to Operation Earnest Will before the invasion of Kuwait in 1990. There's also the USS Tatnall, which joined vessels from several other NATO countries to form Naval On-Call Forces Mediterranean. As part of this unit, Tatnall conducted joint operations like Dragon Hammer and made many port visits to Cagliari, Barcelona, Marseille, and Naples. She was also used as the host of a reception for diplomatic representatives from around the world in the heat of the war, before she was deployed to the Suez Canal and to the Red Sea in support of Desert Shield. Generally, the Charles F. Adams class were guided missile destroyers with full load displacement of 4,526 and propulsion engines of 2 steam turbines providing 52,000 kW or power to 2 shafts. They had 4 1,275 psi boilers, a top speed of 33 knots, and a maximum range of 4,500 nautical miles. For sensor systems, each ship had one AN/SPS-10 surface search radar, one AN/SPS-37 air search radar, one AN/SPS-39 air search 3D radar, 2 AN/SPG-51 Tartar fire control radar, one AN/SPG-53 gun fire control radar, and AN/SQS-23 sonar. The armament of these ships underwent only little upgrades as it proved efficient during not just the Gulf War, but also the Vietnam War and the blockade of Cuba in 1962, decades earlier, or one Mark 13 single-arm missile launcher for the RIM-24 Tartar SAM system. Later on, they were fitted with the RIM-66 Standard and Harpoon anti-ship missiles to complement the 2 5-inch 54 caliber Mark 42 guns, one RUR-5 ASROC launcher, and 2 Mark 32 surface vessel torpedo tubes. Check out our channel for similarly exciting videos like this.